Il nostro viaggio nella
Our journey into physiological regulating medicine now continues and reaches the focal, most important part, which is how to impose a correct therapeutic strategy. What is interesting to note is that the etiopathogenic path, that is, the interpretation of the etiopathogenic path that the physiological regulating medicine gives to different diseases, is inscribed in the therapeutic strategy, which we summarize in the concept of a therapy triangle. In a nutshell, if an exogenous or endogenous stressor, exogenous, a virus, bacterium, or environmental pollution factor, or endogenous, a final catabolite of an enzymatic reaction or an intermediate metabolite, penetrates within a human's homeostatic system, it inevitably alters homeostasis. But our body is phylogenetically designed to maintain and conserve its own homeostasis, that is, its equilibrium and health, and it therefore immediately responds to the insult disturbing the homeostatic equilibrium with an adaptation phenomenon activating the psychoneuroendocrino-immunological axis. If a stressor is not particularly aggressive, and if the PNEI equilibrium of the subject is good, the adjustment will lead to a condition of health maintenance. But, on the other hand, if the stressor is more aggressive or more virulent, or if we have an alteration in the PNEI homeostatic equilibrium, we observe a pathologic process. It is good to observe from the beginning that the pathologic process must also be interpreted as the expression of an adaptation. In fact, every disease is the expression of the struggle in which our body is involved against a stressor in order to recover its homeostatic equilibrium. Fundamentally, some almost stereotypically defensive and therefore adaptive phenomena occur. The first mechanism, a harmful substance, more precisely a stressor, enters within the human system, and immediately we try to put it aside so that it does not create a disturbance. There are tissues that have the ability to deposit these disturbing toxins. One of the most important is definitely also one of the most delicate. We have already discussed it, the extracellular matrix. However, we must be very careful because the capacity to accommodate stresses, disturbing factors, so that they don't interfere with the body's homeostatic equilibrium is not unlimited. In fact, once the interstitial space of the extracellular matrix is full, we can have an overflow of toxins from outside of the cell to within it, with intuitive problems that may arise, such as enzymatic blocks in the mitochondria. So, the first step in the etiopathogenetic path of a disease is the intoxication of the tissues. The second step is a hyper or hypo response in the production of messenger molecules, the neuropeptides, hormones, and interleukins. Under physiological conditions, as we have learned, we normally have a controlled concentration of these substances in the extracellular matrix. They are the concentrations with which we have familiarized ourselves, picograms, nanograms, or, if you prefer, we can refer to them specifically as those concentrations mentioned of 4C or X6. Well, a hyper or hypo production of these substances corresponds to every disease as an adaptive phenomenon. For example, we all know the stress axis: hypothalamus, pituitary, and adrenal glands. When stressed, the hypothalamus produces the releasing hormones which inform the pituitary that there is something wrong. The pituitary produces the pituitary tropins, in particular a hormone, ACTH, that tells the adrenal cortex, hey, you have to produce cortisol to respond to the stress. It's an adaptive phenomenon, and it happens to all of us. At this moment, I am under physiological stress myself, and I am producing more cortisol. But I'm lucky because I have a detoxified matrix, and my good fortune is to have a good PNEI axis in equilibrium. Therefore, I have the capacity to produce cortisol for the absolutely necessary, restricted period of time. But when an employee is stressed out by his boss or is under continuous stress, his hypothalamus produces too much releasing hormone. His pituitary produces too much ACTH, and his adrenals produce too much cortisol. By too much, we mean a quantity above the physiological range. This too much could mean way too much, but in scientific terms we would say that this excessive cortisol induces downregulation, i.e. the closure of the receptors that can be stimulated by cortisol in the hypothalamus. That is, the hypothalamus, suffering from too much cortisol, closes its receptors, adapting to a non-response. But this is really the end, because there is a stopping, slowing of the axis of stress, eustress, and stress that is the expression of our adaptive capacity. Only by reusing the messenger molecules in their physiological concentration, that which induces upregulation, can we restart an opportune physiological, biological axis of stress. Therefore, every disease is the expression of two elements: intoxication at a more superficial level, the extracellular matrix, or at a deeper level, the cell, and is also an expression of an alteration in the PN-EI equilibrium, and therefore in its players, the messenger molecules. We have mentioned intoxication and alteration of the PN-EI equilibrium. When we speak of therapy and therapeutic strategy, we mean to focalize the attention on the triangle of therapy. And this will be an image that is very present in all of our approaches to the patient. The triangle of therapy consists of the blue part representing drainage and detoxification, the yellow part representing PN-EI reprogramming, and a red part representing management of symptoms. Let's examine these therapeutic phases one by one. We start with the first, psychoneuroendocrino-immunological reprogramming. Let's write our acronym. PN-EI PRM Pharmacology offers two fundamental pharmaceuticals that can bring the PN-EI axis, perturbed by a homeostatic alteration, back to equilibrium. These pharmaceuticals are called Guna-Fem for women and Guna-Male for men. These pharmaceuticals are able to work selectively on each of the groups and segments of the PN-EI axis. In particular, they target their action to the endocrine system and to the central nervous system. Let's examine the composition. As you can see, in Guna-Fem, we have a series of organ preparations that are able to bring high neuroendocrine axis back to equilibrium thanks to the simultaneous presence of low, medium, and high homeopathic dilutions. In fact, we act simultaneously on the pineal gland, and at the same time that we administer melatonin at a physiological concentration, we also stimulate the hypothalamus to produce the physiological concentrations of the hypothalamic release hormones. With hypothesis Swiss, we're able to stimulate the pituitary, while with cyclic AMP, we're able to give an impulse to the second cellular messenger. The heart of the Guna-Fem pharmaceutical is a group consisting of the organ preparations Euphorinum and Corpus luteum. These are two organ preparations that are able to selectively stimulate the female genital organs, in particular the ovary and corpus luteum, and therefore to increase, or more accurately, we should say to regulate, the increase of sexual hormones. The other components, including the adrenal gland, the thyroid gland, and the pancreas, and the thymus, are also of great importance. Why are they so important? Because with a complex mechanism capable of acting on the entire psychoneuroendocrino-immunological network, they put the body in the situation and in the conditions to be able to resist and to react in the best way to every stressful situation, i.e. a functional and chronic degenerative pathology. Guna-Fem for women and Guna-Male for men are two very similar pharmaceuticals. In Guna-Male, obviously, the ovary and the corpus luteum will not be present. but the testicle will be. And these are the pharmaceuticals that are able to restore good function to the endocrine system. And I would say, to the entire psycho-neuro-endocrino-immunological axis in general. Gunafem finds application in all of the functional and chronic degenerative pathologies in women. Its base therapy, in a perimenopausal period, for example, is extraordinary. But is also extraordinary when used in teenage girls for its capacity to adjust the PNEI axis and therefore to regulate, for example, the menstrual cycle. Similarly in men, Gunamale will have the ability to bring the entire PNEI axis back to equilibrium. In a nutshell, we could call Gunafem and Gunamale the basic pharmaceuticals to be used for the yellow part of our therapy. When our patient has an alteration of the psycho-neuro-endocrino-immunological axis with a particular alteration of the endocrino-immunological system, we're able to manage this particular pathological clinical condition with the association of Gunafem or Gunamale with a pharmaceutical that we have already met by the name of Cytomix. As you can see, the composition of Cytomix is very complex. On one hand, we have substances that derive from the homeopathic tradition, fundamentally plant substances. On the other hand, we have substances that derive from the homotoxicologic tradition, organ preparations of immune-competent tissues. But the real heart of this pharmaceutical is a group of interleukins, or the core group of players in the immune response. As you can see in this pharmaceutical, some interleukins are present, including GCSF, interferon gamma, interleukin 6, and interleukin 1, to cite a few. Remember that these are the cytokines with straightforward Th1 polarity. The Th1 cells are the T helper lymphocytes, the starters of inflammatory processes. But when we say inflammation, we mean immune function. And Cytomix is therefore an extraordinary immunostimulant that, if associated with Gunafem and Gunamale, is able to manage those imbalances of the PNEI axis that involve the entire neuro-immunoendocrine axis with a particular emphasis at the immunological level. So, remember this drug. When this PNEI imbalance is especially evident at a psycho-neuroendocrine level, we usually associate a third pharmaceutical that is called Gunamood to Gunafem and Gunamale, the two base products. Gunamood is a pharmaceutical that is able to restore balance in neurodegenerative dystonia. We could almost call it the drug of bipolar disorders. And in fact, as you can observe from its composition, a group of serotonin, tryptophan, and hydroxytryptophan is predominant. Its mechanism is evidently different with respect to allopathic pharmaceuticals for serotonin reuptake inhibition. Here, we are not acting in this manner, but by using the physiological concentration of serotonin, we induce the upregulation of the receptors, and thus, ultimately, it is as if we have made a serotonin persist longer on its receptor. It is therefore a great drug for bipolar disturbances in general, and in particular for depressive phenomena. So, summarizing, with regard to the yellow part of the therapy, according to the triangle of physiological regulating medicine, we should remember 4 drugs: Gunafem for women and Gunamale for men, to restore balance to the entire axis. Gunafem or Gunamale plus Cytomix in patients who are immunodeficient or immunocompromised, and Gunafem or Gunamale plus Gunamood in patients with behavior disorders. One very simple word about the dosage. We tend to use these drugs in functional or chronic degenerative pathologies. Gunafem and Gunamale are available in drops with a standard dosage of 20 drops 2 times a day, administered sublingually. Cytomix is available in granules, and in immunocompromised patients, that is, patients with functional or chronic degenerative disorders, the dosage is 10 granules per week for 8 to 10 weeks. Gunamud is also available in drops, as is Gunafem or Gunamel, and the dosage is also the same, 20 drops 2 times a day. Protocols. This is a basic therapy for functional pathologies and for chronic degenerative pathologies. Our suggestion is to extend the therapy for at least 2 months. Stop 1 month and then repeat the therapy cycle for another 2 months. We can't define exactly the time length because by curing the ill and not the illness, the therapeutic protocol will vary from patient to patient. Let's address the study of another part of the therapy triangle according to PRM. It is a fundamental part. Some have defined good drainage as half of a good therapy. In other words, in all pathologies, and in particular in functional pathologies and chronic degenerative disorders, if we learn well how to drain and detoxify the patient, then 50% of the therapy will truly be complete. A precise strategy exists in the field of detoxification and drainage, and now we will study it in depth. We start from a drawing, a very simple drawing. This is a cell, this is the extracellular matrix, this is a lymphatic capillary. Well, this is a classic representation of the morphofunctional unit, capillary, matrix, cell, that in its tiny size represents the body macrocosm. Well, we can have different levels of intoxication. A very deep level of intoxication that involves the cell is definitely the most dangerous level of intoxication, because cellular intoxication obviously compromises cellular function, blocking fundamental enzymatic and metabolic mechanisms. We then have intoxication of the matrix, which is extremely important for us because we have seen that the messenger molecules are liberated in the matrix, but if the matrix is intoxicated, these messenger molecules will not arrive at the transmembrane receptor and therefore will not bring their instructional message to the cell. It will therefore be important to have a pharmacological tool that is capable of detoxifying the matrix. Finally, we had the lymphatic capillaries. We will have to channel all of the toxins that we remove from the cell and from the matrix into the lymphatic capillaries. Through the lymphatic capillaries, they will arrive at the thoracic duct. The toxins will be released in the leb subclavian, laterally to the jugular, travel through the bloodstream, and through the bloodstream they will arrive at the excretory organs. Physiological regulating medicine provides the instruments to act on the cell, on the extracellular matrix, on the capillaries, and on the excretion organs. The first pharmaceutical that I want to bring to your attention is called Gunacel. It is a pharmaceutical that, due to its composition, is able to carry out 2 fundamental tasks. The first is to remove toxins from the intracellular space and direct them back to the extracellular matrix, so it is a potent detoxification pharmaceutical. And the second task carried out by the Gunacel pharmaceutical is its action as a metabolic booster, i.e., a drug that is able to give energy and to increase cellular oxidative phosphorylation. Therefore, understand very well that it will be a fundamental drug in all of the functional pathologies, and even more for the chronic degenerative ones that have a metabolic decrease as one of their basic etiopathogenic steps. With Gunacel, we're able to mobilize the toxins from within the cells, channeling them back outside of the cells. What is the outside of the cell? The extracellular matrix. Good work! We can definitely say that we are satisfied because it is certainly better to have a toxic load outside of the cell than in the cytoplasm. But we are still not completely satisfied because for us, in PRM, the extracellular matrix is the mother of all tissues. An intoxicated extracellular matrix will not permit the passage of messenger molecules or nutrients in their path and journey towards the cell. Therefore, its integrity and detoxification are the real watershed between health and disease. PRM pharmacology provides an extraordinary pharmaceutical from this standpoint, and probably the only drug in the world that is able to profoundly detoxify the extracellular matrix. The name of this drug is Guna Matrix. With Guna Matrix, we're able to mobilize that toxic load that, originating from the cell, has been removed by Guna cell and is now found in the matrix, and that, through Guna Matrix, will be able to be conveyed to the lymphatic capillary. I would like you to observe the composition of Guna Matrix, as it is very complex. On one hand, we have the classic homeopathic remedies, such as Thuja occidentalis, which is also able to remove the toxic load from the matrix, but the truly innovative elements are the messenger molecules. In particular, I would like to bring one to your attention: interleukin 6. Interleukin 6 is known to be able to activate metalloproteinases. The metalloproteinases are enzymes that can liquefy the fundamental substance of the matrix. Liquefying the fundamental substance of the matrix means giving the toxins that are blocking it the possibility of being removed and conveyed to the exhaust pipe, represented by the lymphatic capillary. In short, Guna Matrix is a pharmaceutical that is capable of reshuffling the matrix, remodeling it, bringing it to a liquid state, though it is in a gel state, and is able to hydrate the matrix. In short, Guna Matrix is really the focal pharmaceutical in the drainage strategy and in the general strategy of physiological regulating medicine. Great work! Now, we have in the matrix the toxic load that was originally in the cell. We unblock it from the matrix with Guna Matrix, and we convey it to the lymphatic capillaries. To be sure that the toxic load can travel easily along the lymphatic capillary, we encourage the lymphagogue action of the capillaries and the lymph with a pharmaceutical that is called Guna Lympho. Okay, now we have written the typical triad that is used in all of the total body detoxification therapy treatments.
Total body detoxification therapy.
Guna cell plus Guna Matrix plus Guna Lympho. Now the toxic load that was in the body is traveling along the lymph stream through the thoracic duct, and as we have said, we arrive at the left subclavian, and from the left subclavian the toxic load is now traveling on a hypothetical trip into the bloodstream. First, the toxic load was in the cell. We are still not satisfied, since our final objective is a definitive detoxification of the body. We can do it! Yes, we can do it, by activating some of the excretory organs. A brief note regarding anatomy. There are 5 excretory organs or systems: the integumentary system, the respiratory system, the liver and biliary system, the genitourinary apparatus, and the gastrointestinal system. From a PRM standpoint, we favor 3 drainage systems: the liver and biliary system, the genitourinary apparatus, and the gastrointestinal system. Remember the names of these 3 pharmaceuticals. Guna Kidney, the pharmaceutical capable of activating renal function for the final excretion of the toxic load. Guna Liver, capable of activating hepatic function for the final discharge of the toxic load. Guna Bowel, capable of activating intestinal function for the final discharge of the toxic load. To use an evocative but extremely effective image, Imagine that Guna kidney, Guna liver, and Guna bowel are none other than faucets, capable of increasing the excretory flow of the toxins. So, in our total body detoxification and drainage strategy, we use Guna cell plus Guna matrix plus Guna lympho. Detoxification therapy for the entire body plus one of the 3 pharmaceuticals that can activate the excretory organs. Why one? And which should we choose? Well, the fundamental rule for total body detoxification therapy is to always use the pharmaceutical capable of activating the most functionally effective and efficient organ at that moment. For example, if your patient is subjected to a total body detoxification therapy, Guna cell plus Guna matrix plus Guna lympho, but presents a straightforward renal insufficiency, never associate Guna kidney, but always focus on one of the parallel organs, for example, by using Guna liver or Guna bowel. If your patient has hepatic cirrhosis or hepatic insufficiency, never associate Guna liver with the Guna cell plus Guna matrix plus Guna lympho triad, because it would be like saying to the liver, which is in condition of functional insufficiency, hey, you deal with the toxic load removed from all the other organs in the body. That's not good, so always use a parallel organ, the one that works best. One drug deserves special attention in our detoxification and drainage strategy: Guna matrix. Why? Because as the name itself suggests, this pharmaceutical is capable of working on that tissue that we have defined as the most important in our body. Let's consider the structure of the extracellular matrix. This here could be an interstitial space. These are the cells. This is a blood capillary. The messenger molecules, that is, the neuropeptides, hormones, interleukins, growth factors, and nutrients in general, vitamins or trace elements, travel along the blood capillary. Molecular oxygen, for example, also travels along the blood capillary. What can happen? If the matrix is particularly intoxicated, and that is unfortunately what normally happens, especially in civilized society, the catabolites, pollutants, and food waste are all deposited at the level of the extracellular matrix. This intoxication determines, among other things, an alteration of the histological structure of the loose pericellular fibrillar connective tissue that we have defined as the extracellular matrix. We could say that we find a condition of rigidity in this fundamental substance instead of a condition of softness. It is almost as though we have a brick in the place of the extracellular matrix. The matrix is particularly dehydrated, and in short, there are truly profound histological modifications. Well, let's focus now only on oxygen. If oxygen cannot travel in the extracellular matrix, it cannot arrive at the cell. Under conditions of low oxygen surface tension, the cell couldn't live. But luckily, our cells have a great capacity for adaptation, and they know how to live, even under very difficult conditions. So, in order for the cell to survive, it shifts its own metabolism, from aerobic metabolism that uses oxygen to anaerobic metabolism. Okay, it manages to survive. But to be able to survive under anaerobic conditions, the cell changes its conformation. So from a normally differentiated cell, it becomes a fibroblast. Okay, we'll do it to survive, but what is a fibroblast if not a less vital cell? A cell that is aging. In short, we can say that one of the secrets of longevity, one of the secrets of youthfulness, resides right in the extracellular matrix. Pay attention, as it's not only an issue of youthfulness, wellness, or beauty. the persistence of anaerobic conditions and conditions of low oxygen surface tension induces a transformation of the fibroblast into an even more de-differentiated cell. This even more differentiated cell is a tumor cell. In fact, let's remember that the metabolism of a tumor cell is not randomly anaerobic. This is to understand that the mother of all therapies in physiological regulating medicine resides in the regulation of the function of this tissue that is the extracellular matrix. Our great fortune is to have such an extraordinary therapeutic performer as Guna Matrix. It is easy to notice when a patient is under therapy with Guna Matrix. Look at his skin. After 10 days of therapy, it'll be more luminous. It's inevitable. More oxygen, more nutrients, more beta-estradiol on the adipose cells of the dermis, and therefore more trophism and resistance to the collapse of the epidermis on the skin, i.e., the phenomenon we know as wrinkles. The therapy triangle's third side, the red side, is equally important as it is the side representing the management of symptoms. The red side of the triangle, together with the blue side, detoxification and drainage, and the yellow side, PN-EI reprogramming, concludes our therapeutic strategy. Surely, it is also the most simple to apply of the three sides, because it is commanded by symptom-drug linearity. It fundamentally regards drugs with an anti-inflammatory action, but are chosen on the basis of the particular symptoms presented by a patient with a certain disease. It helps significantly in this sense when it comes to selecting the proper drugs. We'll call them REDs. It is the therapeutic guide of modern physiological regulating medicine, and inside it, we find every pharmaceutical perfectly described. And in the first part, the therapeutic index, the proper red, blue, and yellow pharmaceuticals to use for each disease to give immediate relief to the patient are suggested for every pathology. Our strategy is not only to cure a symptom, we have defined it from the beginning. Our strategy is to bring equilibrium back to a patient. We could say our strategy is not just to cure disease or relieve symptoms, but our strategy is to cure the sick person. Our strategy, in summary, is to bring a patient back to physiological conditions. This is the core meaning of physiological regulating medicine.